Most people in the town did not know the homeless woman's name. They saw her almost every day, sitting near the old railway yard, close to the broken fence where grass had grown taller than the tracks. She wore the same worn jacket and carried a small bag with all her belongings inside. People passed her on their way to work, to shops, to warm homes. Some avoided eye contact. Some whispered. Many ignored her completely. Her name was Mara. Mara had not always lived on the street. Long ago, she had a small home, a job, and a life that felt steady. But life had slowly taken everything away. One problem led to another. Soon, she had nowhere left to go. The railway yard became her quiet place, a forgotten corner of the town where no one asked questions. The trains no longer ran there. Years earlier, the station was closed, and the tracks were left behind. Rust covered the metal. Old train cars stood still like tired animals that had given up moving. Birds lived inside them. Wind passed through broken windows, making soft sounds at night. Mara liked that place. She felt safe there. One morning, as the sun rose weakly behind gray clouds, Mara noticed something new. A piece of paper was tied to the fence with wire. The paper moved gently in the wind. She walked closer. The paper read, "Decommissioned train for sale. As is. Price $1. Mara read it slowly. She read it again. Her heart beat a little faster. A train for $1. To anyone else, the idea was funny. The train was old, broken, and useless. It had been sitting there for many years. No one wanted it. The town wanted to get rid of it without spending money. But Mara did not laugh. She stepped through the broken fence and walked toward the train. The metal was cold under her hand. Rust covered the sides, but the shape was still strong. Inside, the floor was dusty, and old seats were torn. The smell of oil and iron filled the air. Mara closed her eyes. Memories came back to her. When she was a child, her father worked on trains. He used to bring her to the station early in the morning. She remembered sitting beside him, watching him fix things, listening to his stories. He always told her that trains were symbols of movement. No matter how long they stopped, they were built to move forward again. Her father was gone now. Her old life was gone too. But standing inside that train, Mara felt something she had not felt in a long time. Purpose. That afternoon, Mara walked into the town office. Her clothes were worn, and her shoes were old, but her steps were steady. The people inside looked surprised when they saw her. A man behind the counter raised his eyebrows. "Can I help you?" "I want to buy the train," Mara said. The room became quiet. Someone nearby laughed softly. "The train?" the man asked. "You know it doesn't work, right?" "Yes," Mara replied. "It's just scrap," he said. "No electricity. No engine. Nothing useful." Mara reached into her pocket. She pulled out a $1 bill and placed it on the counter. "I understand," she said calmly. "I still want it." The man stared at her. He had seen Mara around town before, but he had never heard her speak like this. She sounded clear and sure. After a moment, he sighed. "If you want it, it's yours. The town just wants it gone." Paperwork was signed. A key was handed over. Just like that, Mara owned a train. Outside, people watched as she walked back toward the rail yard. Some shook their heads. Some whispered jokes. A few felt confused. Why would a homeless woman buy an old train? Mara did not listen. She unlocked the door of the first train car and stepped inside as the sun began to set. The light turned the rusted walls orange and gold. Dust floated in the air. It was quiet, but not empty. That night, Mara cleaned a small corner of the train. She swept the floor with an old brush she found nearby. She wiped a seat and sat down. For the first time in years, she slept under a solid roof. Rain fell later that night. Water hit the metal roof loudly, but none reached her. She listened to the sound and smiled softly. The train protected her. The next morning, people noticed something strange. Smoke rose from the train. Not dangerous smoke, but the kind that comes from warmth. Someone had made a small heater inside using safe materials. Someone had cleaned the windows. Someone had opened the doors wide and let light inside. That someone was Mara. She spent her days collecting discarded wood, old furniture, and tools others had thrown away. She cleaned every car slowly, one step at a time. She repaired what she could. When she could not fix something, she found a way around it. People passing by began to stop and watch. "She's serious," someone said. "She won't last," another replied. But Mara kept going. She turned one car into a sleeping space. Another became a small kitchen area. She found old curtains and washed them. She painted the walls with leftover paint donated by a man who felt curious. Weeks passed. The train no longer looked abandoned. It looked alive. Children pointed at it. Neighbors talked about it. Some even brought food or supplies without saying much. They were not sure why they were helping, but something about Mara's quiet focus moved them. Still, no one understood her true plan. They thought she was just building a shelter. They were wrong. Mara was not just fixing a train. She was creating something that would soon change the entire town. And this was only the beginning. The town slowly started to notice the train. At first, people only glanced at it while passing by. Then they began to slow down. Soon, they stopped completely. What once looked like a pile of metal now looked different. The rust was still there, but it was cleaner. The broken windows were covered with clear plastic sheets. The doors opened smoothly instead of hanging loose. Mara worked every day. She woke up early, often before the sun. Cold mornings did not stop her. She wrapped her jacket tightly and stepped outside the train to gather what she needed. Some days she found wood. Other days she found old furniture thrown away behind stores. Once, she even found a small table left near a closed shop. She carried everything back to the train by herself. Her hands became rough. Her arms ached. But her face stayed calm. She worked slowly and carefully, fixing one small thing at a time. She did not rush. She did not complain. One afternoon, a woman from town stopped near the fence. "What are you building?" the woman asked. Mara looked up from her work. "A place," she replied. The woman frowned. "A place for what?" "For people who need one," Mara said. The woman did not reply. She watched for a moment, then left. But the question stayed in her mind. Word began to spread. People talked at the market, at work, and at home. They spoke about the homeless woman and the train. Some thought she was wasting her time. Others felt curious. A few felt something deeper, though they could not explain it. One evening, an old man named Ben walked toward the rail yard. He carried a bag with tools inside. He had worked with metal his whole life and knew trains well. He stood near the fence and watched Mara tighten a loose panel. "You know that frame needs support," Ben said. Mara looked up, surprised. "I know," she replied. "I just do not have the right tools." Ben stepped closer. "I can help," he said. Mara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. That night, the two worked together. Ben showed her how to strengthen the structure without replacing everything. He explained things clearly and slowly. Mara listened carefully. She learned fast. When they finished, Ben left without asking for anything. The next day, someone else came. A young man named Leo brought paint. "It was left over from a job," he said. "I thought you could use it." Then a woman named Nina brought blankets. "They are clean," she said quietly. Soon, small acts of help became normal. No one announced it. No one made speeches. People simply came, helped, and left. The train changed more each day. Mara turned one car into a warm resting area with beds made from wooden frames and thick blankets. She turned another car into a shared space where people could sit and talk. She even created a small cooking area using safe equipment donated by a local shop. She kept everything clean and organized. She made simple rules and wrote them on a board near the door. Respect the space. Help when you can. Take only what you need. People who had nowhere to go started coming quietly at night. Some stayed. Some left in the morning. All were treated the same. Mara never asked for names. She never asked for stories. She only offered space. The town changed too. People who once avoided the rail yard now walked there freely. Children asked questions. Teachers talked about kindness. Shop owners left food near the fence without being asked. One night, heavy rain fell. The streets flooded in some areas. A few families could not return home safely. They heard about the train and went there, unsure of what they would find. Mara opened the doors without hesitation. Inside, the train was warm and dry. People sat quietly, sharing food and stories. No one felt judged. No one felt unwanted. The next morning, a local reporter arrived. He had heard rumors and wanted to see for himself. He took notes as he walked through the train. He spoke with people who stayed there. He watched Mara work. "You built all this?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "We built it," she said. The article came out the next day. The headline spoke about a woman who bought a train for $1 and turned it into something no one expected. The story spread beyond the town. People from nearby areas came to see it. Some brought supplies. Some brought skills. Some brought ideas. The train was no longer just a shelter. It became a place of connection. The town council noticed too. They held meetings and discussed what to do. Some wanted to take control of the train. Others believed it should be left alone. The train had solved problems they had ignored for years. One council member visited the rail yard personally. "You did something important," he told Mara. "But people will ask questions." Mara nodded. "I welcome questions," she said. "I just do not welcome fear." The council member left quietly. Mara stood outside the train that evening, watching the sun sink behind the tracks. The metal glowed softly. The place felt alive in a way it never had before. She thought about how far she had come. She still owned nothing but the clothes she wore and the train itself. Yet she had more than she ever imagined. Purpose, community, hope. But change often brings attention. And attention brings challenges. As night fell, headlights appeared near the rail yard. Several cars stopped near the fence. People stepped out, watching the train closely. Mara felt it. Something was coming. Something that would test everything she had built. And she knew the next part of this journey would be the hardest yet. The cars near the rail yard stayed longer than expected. Their headlights lit up the fence and the front of the train. People inside the train noticed the light and grew quiet. Some stood near the windows. Others held their bags close. Many of them had seen trouble before and knew how fast safety could disappear. Mara stepped outside. She did not rush. She did not hide. She walked calmly toward the fence as the car doors opened. Several people stepped out. They looked official. Clean clothes. Serious faces. One of them carried a folder. A man stepped forward. His name was Paul. He spoke in a firm but controlled voice. "We are here to talk about the train," he said. Mara nodded. "I am listening." Paul looked around at the rail yard and then at the train. "This land belongs to the town," he said. "The train was sold as scrap. What you are doing here was not planned." Mara kept her hands relaxed at her sides. "I bought the train legally," she replied. "I am using it to help people." Paul glanced at his folder. "No one expected this," he said. "There are safety rules, permits, responsibility." People behind Mara began to step forward. Ben stood beside her. Leo and Nina were there too. They did not speak, but their presence was clear. Mara looked back at the train and then returned her attention to Paul. "Come inside," she said. "See it first." Paul hesitated but agreed. Inside the train, the air was warm. Clean blankets were folded neatly. People sat quietly, respectful and calm. Children read books. An older woman poured water for someone else. Paul walked slowly through each car. His expression changed. The space was organized. The rules were clear. Nothing felt dangerous or careless. "This was built with thought," Paul said quietly. Mara nodded. "It was built with care," she replied. The visit ended without argument. Paul said they would talk again. The cars left. The night returned to silence. But the message was clear. The train was now too visible to be ignored. The next days were tense. People worried the train would be taken away. Some stopped coming at night, afraid of losing what little they had again. Others stayed, unwilling to leave the safety they finally found. Mara called a meeting inside the shared car. Everyone sat together. Some on chairs. Some on the floor. The light was soft. The mood was serious. "This place belongs to all of us," Mara said. "But we must protect it together." Ben spoke next. "The town does not want trouble," he said. "They want control." Nina nodded. "They are afraid of what they do not manage," she said. Mara listened. "We will do this the right way," Mara said. "We will show them this place is safe and useful." They decided to open the train to the public during the day. Anyone could visit. Anyone could ask questions. Nothing would be hidden. The next morning, a sign appeared near the fence. "Community train. Open to all. Built by care." People came. Teachers brought students. Local workers came during breaks. Even those who once judged from afar stepped inside. They saw order, respect, and peace. Mara spoke little. She let the place speak for itself. A week later, the town council called for a public meeting. The room was full. Some stood along the walls. The train was the only topic. Paul spoke first. "The train has become a center for many," he said. "We must decide its future." Some argued it should be removed. Others spoke in its defense. People who had stayed there shared their stories. Shop owners talked about reduced problems in town. Teachers spoke about lessons learned. Then Mara was asked to speak. She stood slowly. "I did not plan to change anything," she said. "I only needed a place to stand. The train gave that to me. I shared it because sharing makes strength." The room was silent. "I do not ask for ownership of the land," she continued. "I ask for trust. Let this place stay. Let it grow with care." The council voted later that night. The decision surprised many. The train would stay. Not only that, but the town would help maintain it as a community project. Safety checks would be done. Support would be given. The train would remain a shared space. People hugged. Some cried. Relief filled the room. Mara walked back to the rail yard under the night sky. The train lights glowed warmly. People inside waved when they saw her. She stepped inside and sat quietly. She thought about how close she came to losing everything again. She thought about the strength of standing still and speaking calmly. She thought about trust. The train had passed its hardest test so far. But life never stops testing. That same night, a letter was slipped under the train door. Mara picked it up and read it slowly. It was from a nearby city. They had heard about the train. They wanted to meet. They had an idea that could change everything. Mara folded the letter carefully. She knew this journey was far from over, and the next step would take the train beyond the town, beyond anything she ever imagined. The letter stayed in Mara's pocket all night. She read it again in the morning light. The words were polite and clear. A group from a nearby city had heard about the train. They worked in community planning. They wanted to visit and learn. They believed the idea could help many people. Mara folded the letter carefully. She felt nervous, but not afraid. The train had already changed her life and the town. Now it was calling others. A week later, a small bus arrived near the rail yard. 5 people stepped out. They carried notebooks and cameras, but their faces were calm, not judging. A woman named Ruth led the group. "Thank you for welcoming us," Ruth said. Mara nodded. "Welcome to the train." They walked through each car slowly. Ruth asked thoughtful questions. The group listened to the people inside. They took notes, but they also helped. One fixed a loose shelf. Another washed dishes. They treated the place with respect. "This is not just a shelter," Ruth said. "It is a system built on trust." Mara smiled slightly. "It was built on need," she replied. The visitors stayed all day. Before leaving, Ruth spoke privately with Mara. "We want to try this idea in the city," she said. "Old buses and used buildings, even trains like this. But we want you involved." Mara was surprised. "Me? You started it," Ruth said. "Your voice matters." The idea felt unreal. Mara had once been ignored on the street. Now people were asking her to guide them. Back in town, reactions were mixed. Some were proud. Others were worried. "What if the train becomes too big?" one person asked. "What if attention brings problems?" another said. Mara listened to everyone. She understood their fears. Growth always brings risk. So she made a choice. She would not leave the train. Not fully. Instead, she would help others learn while keeping the heart of the project strong. Workshops began inside the train. Visitors from other towns came to listen and observe. They learned how the train was built, how rules were set, how respect was kept. Mara spoke more now, but still softly. She explained that the space worked because people felt ownership. Not control but care. Everyone helped. Everyone mattered. Meanwhile, the train itself continued to improve. Solar panels were added to the roof with help from volunteers. Better insulation made winters warmer. A small library was created using donated books. A quiet room was added for rest and reflection. The train became a living example. News spread wider. One afternoon, a letter arrived from far away. It came from a national group that worked with unused transport spaces. They wanted to fund similar projects. This time, the town council joined the discussion. Meetings were long. Questions were many. Agreements took time. Mara sat at the table as an equal. She spoke clearly and honestly. "This place must stay human," she said. "If it becomes about money or power, it will fail." The group agreed. A plan was formed. The train would remain the center. New projects would grow elsewhere, guided by the same values. Mara would train leaders, not manage everything herself. The town celebrated quietly. But not everyone was happy. A few voices began to question Mara's role. "She has too much influence," someone said. "She is still homeless," another whispered. These words reached Mara's ears. They hurt, but she did not react with anger. Instead, she worked harder to include others. She invited critics to meetings. She asked for feedback. She shared decision-making. Slowly, most doubts faded. One evening, Ben sat beside Mara on the steps of the train. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. Mara looked at the tracks stretching into the distance. "Sometimes," she said. "But not yet." "You could have a house," Ben said. "A normal life." Mara smiled gently. "This is my normal now." As seasons changed, the train stood strong. Snow came and went. Leaves fell and returned. People passed through the train and carried its lessons with them. One day, a young girl visited with her class. She looked up at Mara. "Did you really buy this for $1?" the girl asked. Yes, Mara replied. The girl thought for a moment. Then that dollar changed a lot, she said. Mara laughed softly. Yes, she said. It did. But even as success grew, Mara felt something changing inside her. She felt tired. Not weak, but aware. She knew she could not lead forever. The train needed a future beyond her. So she began preparing others. She taught Leo how to manage repairs. Nina learned how to welcome newcomers. Ben trained younger volunteers. Leadership was shared openly. The train was no longer dependent on one person. That was when Mara knew it was ready. One quiet morning, she walked alone through each car. She touched the walls, the tables, the doors. She remembered the first night she slept there, cold and alone. Now the train was warm with life. People trusted it. The town trusted it. She stepped outside and looked at the tracks once more. The train had not moved. But it had taken everyone far. And soon, its greatest transformation would not be what it became, but what it inspired. The morning sun rose gently over the rail yard. Mara stood beside the train, watching light touch the metal walls. The rust was still there in places, but it no longer looked weak. It looked honest. The train carried its past proudly. People were already awake inside. Soft voices floated through open doors. Someone was making tea. Someone else was sweeping the floor. The train moved with quiet purpose. Mara took a deep breath. Today felt different. For weeks, she had prepared for this moment. She had trained others. She had shared every lesson she learned. The train no longer needed her hands on every task. It had grown beyond her. The town gathered later that morning. Not for a celebration, but for a meeting. People stood near the tracks, some sitting on benches, others leaning against the fence. Faces from all parts of the town were there. Old and young. Those who once judged and those who once needed help. Ben stood beside Mara. "You ready?" he asked. Mara nodded. Yes. She stepped forward. "When I bought this train, I had nothing," she said. "No home. No plan. Only a memory of how trains are built to move forward." People listened closely. "This train gave me shelter," she continued. "But it gave us more than that. It gave us a way to care without fear." She turned and looked at the train. "It is time for this place to belong fully to the community." A quiet sound passed through the crowd. Mara explained her decision. She would no longer be the leader. The train would be guided by a group chosen from those who worked there daily. Decisions would be shared. The values would stay the same. No one argued. They understood. The council approved the plan that afternoon. Papers were signed. The train officially became a community trust. Its future was protected. That evening, something special happened. A group from another city arrived. They had transformed an old bus into a shelter inspired by the train. They came to thank Mara. "We used your model," one of them said. "It works." More news followed. Another town turned an unused station into a shared space. A school built a small program based on the train's rules. A city far away reached out to learn more. Mara watched all of this quietly. She did not feel proud in a loud way. She felt peaceful. Weeks later, a small house near the edge of town was offered to her. It was simple, warm, and close to the rail yard. Mara accepted. She moved in slowly, bringing only what she needed. She still visited the train every day, but now she arrived as a guest. People greeted her with smiles. Some thanked her. Some hugged her. Others simply sat beside her and talked. The train continued to grow, but gently. No signs. No fame. Only care. One afternoon, the reporter who first wrote about the train returned. "Do you feel shocked by what this became?" he asked. Mara thought for a moment. "I am not shocked," she said. "I am reminded." "Of what?" he asked. That people are waiting to help, she replied. They just need a place to start. The reporter wrote one final article. This time, the headline was simple. A train that never moved, yet changed everything. Years passed. Mara grew older. Her steps slowed, but her eyes stayed bright. She watched children who once stayed in the train grow into adults who now helped others. The rail yard was no longer forgotten. Flowers grew near the fence. Art covered the walls. Music played on weekends. The train was still there, strong and steady. One quiet evening, Mara sat on a bench near the tracks. A young man sat beside her. I heard you bought this for $1, he said. Mara smiled. Yes. He shook his head. That is impossible. Mara laughed softly. No, she said. It was the easiest part. She looked at the train one last time as the sun lowered. It was never about metal or money. It was about seeing value where others saw nothing. About standing still when the world rushed past. About believing that even something forgotten can become a beginning. Mara closed her eyes, feeling calm. The train remained. Not as a machine, but as a promise. And that promise continued long after her footsteps faded from the tracks.